Good morning, everybody. Time is now 9:30 a.m. Today's date is Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. This is the time and place for the regularly scheduled business meeting in the Montana Public Service Commission. We are in the Bollinger Conference Room of the PSC, and I call this meeting to order. Would my colleagues please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, thank you, colleagues. I would note for the record that myself and Commissioner Bukacek are present in the Bollinger Room this morning. Vice President Fielder is participating remotely. Commissioners Pinocci and O'Donnell are excused this morning, but we do have quorum. All right, the Montana Public Service Commission welcomes public comment on any matter on today's agenda or on any matter within the jurisdiction of the Montana Public Service Commission. Are there any public commenters in the room? Seeing none, are there any public commenters online? Seeing none, no public comment this morning. We do have one change to the agenda this morning. We are going to defer work session item number 2, which is docket 2022.07.073, the petition of Kelp to set terms and conditions for a QF. That will be deferred to a future meeting. All right, let's move into our action items. Action item number 1 is approval of the commission minutes for the week of April 24, 2023. Commissioner Bukacek.
I move that we approve of the commission meetings for the
All right,
minutes for the week of April 24th, 2020.
and I will second that motion. All right, discussion, changes to the draft commission minutes for the week of April 24, 2023. Seeing none, all those in favor of Commissioner Bukacek's motion to approve the minutes for the week of April 24th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. All right, action item number 2 is approval of staff out of state travel. Mr. Rosequist.
Good morning, Mr. President, Commissioners. Staff requests approval for Dan Sherwood to travel to Pueblo, Colorado, June 26th through the 30th. The purpose of this travel is to allow Dan to complete part 2 of the Motive Power and Equipment Fundamentals course that is required by the Federal Railroad Administration for certification in the MP&E discipline. The course involves a combination of classroom and hands-on instruction and training regarding the MP&E compliance requirements and is held at the Department of Transportation's Railroad Safety Technical Training Facility in Colorado. The expected cost of this travel is approximately $2,000 and is reimbursable under the Commission's FRA grant. Staff recommends approval, Mr. President.
All right, I will move to approve the travel for Dan Sherwood to travel to Pueblo, Colorado in June. Is there a second?
I second.
Motion has been seconded. Discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, all those in favor of my motion to approve Mr. Sherwood's travel to Pueblo, Colorado signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, staff travel is approved. All right, let's move into our work session items. Work session item number 1 is the organizational rule update for the PSC. This is a commission initiated matter. Commission will consider updating the commission's organizational rule to reflect the current commission roster, among other changes. Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move adoption of the organizational rule for the agency as amended.
Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Mr. Bukacek has seconded. Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. The changes to this rule reflect management changes which have been occurring under our reorganization within the past year. So we have retitled the External Affairs Manager position to External Affairs Coordinator. We have moved one of our management positions to a non-appointed position, so that change is reflected. We have reassigned the inventory responsibilities to the Commission Secretary. We have moved the Consumer Assistance Program staff over to the Regulatory Division. And under this administrative rule change, that group is called the Compliance Assistance Unit. The duties and job titles really don't change for them. They are still, they do change from the last time we adopted the rule. They're no longer consumer assistance staff per se. They still will handle consumer assistance duties, but they're also assisting with regulatory compliance. And so they have been reclassified as regulatory compliance specialists. We have made a clarification regarding the districts that commissioners represent. To clarify that each commissioner resides within a unique geographic district from which they are elected. That is an attempt at cleanup, given the legislature has redistricted, created new district boundaries that may cause confusion as to which current commissioner represents which district. So the intent is to maintain the status quo so that each commissioner that was elected within a district continues to represent the district, even though the boundaries are changing. And I believe and then very important change is that we had a change on the commission roster. So Commissioner Annie Bukacek for District 5 now replaces Commissioner and former Vice President Brad Johnson for Commission District 5. The other change that's on here is that we are recognizing that regionally placed railroad safety inspectors are not required to be headquartered at the main office of the commission. There's a move to strike the section regarding commissioners' designated headquarters, with the idea that we would take up the question of whether or not commissioners should be reimbursed for travel between their home in the district in which they reside and the Helena headquarters, to take that question up with the legislature to make sure that we have clarity on legislative intent regarding that matter. And then there's a revised organizational chart, which includes not just the administrative areas of operation, but all of the managerial areas of operation within the agency that would replace the 1-year-old organizational chart that we had adopted last February of 2022. I believe those are all of the changes, Mr. President.
All right. Thank you, Vice President Fielder. Discussion? Several comments. One, thank you, Vice President Fielder, for your continued good work. Organizational structure, the agency, your work is appreciated. And number two, welcome officially, apparently, Commissioner Bukacek. All right, further discussion. All right, seeing none. All those in favor of Vice President Fielder's motion to adopt the updated organizational rule signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed signify by saying no. Seeing no opposition, motion carries. I'd note for the record that Commissioner Noche has joined us. We just took up the organizational rule and approved it. Okay, as noted, work session item number 2, which is docket 2022.07.073, petition of KELP. is deferred to a future meeting. Therefore, we will move into work session item number 3. This is docket 2021.06.081, high quality H2O. We're here to consider high quality H2O's application for rates and charges for services in Missoula, Montana. We will make a decision on the application. Mr. Finker, Mr. Hamilton, who wants the privilege? Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, commissioners. It wasn't too terribly long ago that we last had high quality water in front of the commission for a decision on high quality's ORM or operating ratio methodology application. The commission did not reach a decision during our last work session. Staff's recommendation has not changed since the last work session, but the purpose of this session is to take another run at it and see if the commission is prepared to make a decision based on the materials already in front of it. So if there are any additional questions, staff is here to help answer the questions that we can. Thank you, Mr. President.
Before we move into it, remind us what the staff recommendation was.
Certainly, Mr. President. Staff's recommendation was to adopt all the proposals that were originally offered by the Montana Consumer Council, and that consisted primarily of an adjustment to the management salary expense line item to reduce the requested $40 an hour down to, I believe it was just over $19 an hour based on MCC's evidence of the prevailing market rate for the job duties encompassed by that management staff person. And whereas MCC had disallowed a 25% adder under the ORM, staff's recommendation was to make that adjustment and allow a 25% adder on top of that market rate. Second major adjustment was to the rental expense based on the square footage of space used in the owner operator's other business under the IRS methodology that was originally proposed and then modified somewhat by the MCC. So those are the two major financial adjustments to the rate as proposed by high quality water that I can recall on the spot here. And Mr. President, with your indulgence, I'd pass it to Mr. Fink to see if I've left out anything.
Mr. President, Mr. Hamilton did not leave anything out. Did a great job.
He rarely does. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Is there a motion, Vice President Fielder?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move that we adopt staff recommendation on high quality water with 2 slight variations. One being to allow the $40 hourly rate salary for the company manager, and 2 being to disallow the 25% adder on that expense.
Okay, and that, as I recall, that was scenario number 5 as prepared by staff, correct?
I am not certain. I'm looking through it now. Yes, I believe you're correct. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, motion has been seconded. Discussion. Vice President Fielder.
Mr. President, I believe this is a little bit cleaner way to go about this. I find evidence that the $40 an hour salary rate for the manager, the sole manager of the company, is in line with economic data evidence, and disallowing the 25% adder on those expenses, I believe, is falls within precedent past practices of the commission under those circumstances. So I think we're fine in terms of aligning with past precedent and also being reasonable with this company. The rates for the customers will decrease by almost 46% of what they are paying now. So this will be a good savings for the customers while still allowing the company to be compensated for their management work.
Right, thank you, Commissioner Fielder. Commissioner Bukacek, I know you had some thoughts on this last time we discussed. Did you want to weigh in?
I consider it a reasonable compromise regarding the differences of opinion we had about the $40 to remove the adder. I think it's a reasonable compromise.
All right, further discussion, Commissioner Pinochi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question for Lucas Hamilton. So Consumer Counsel's someone I want to keep a close eye on when they have an opinion. So we're back to $40 an hour, but listening to Vice President Fielder, she claims rates will still drop 46%. You think Consumer Counsel would support that $40 an hour while still seeing rates decrease by 46%? What are your thoughts there? How would we explain that to the Consumer Counsel if we pass this today?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, I think Consumer Counsel's position on this one is clear that they would prefer to see the management salary rate not at $40, but rather at the $19 and change that they had originally proposed. And that is shown in scenario number 2 of the April 3, 2023 staff memorandum that was included in the meeting materials. So I think that MCC's position here would be that the appropriate deduction or decrease from current rates should be closer to 59% as shown in that scenario 2.
Excuse me. So what you're saying is if we support Vice President Fielder, we're seeing a reduction of 46%. If we support staff recommendations, we're seeing a drop at 59%. Does that sound correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, no, it doesn't sound correct because the staff recommendation was actually just slightly different than the MCC recommendation. So the staff recommendation was shown as scenario 3 in that staff memo, and that decrease from current rates was 54%. Just 54.5%, basically rounding. So that was scenario 3. That is a slightly smaller decrease relative to current rates than what MCC had proposed in scenario 2, but it is a larger percentage decrease than as shown in scenario 5, which is the current motion pending before the commission.
So a better way to explain this is Vice President Fielder's decrease is 46%. Well, staff recommendations would be a decrease of 54%. Does that sound better?
Mr. President, Commissioner Pinochi, that would be the correct summary of where that falls out.
Thank you, Mr. President. No more questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Pinochi. Further discussion,
Mr. President,
Vice President Fielder.
just to add on there to Commissioner Pinochi's questioning and just to perhaps give him my reasoning is part of this is, the Consumer Counsel looks at things specifically from the consumer's perspective. And of course, the consumer is going to want the lowest possible rate. They would probably be happy to pay $0 for their monthly utility service. But if we lower the rates too far, we do risk having the business go out of business and then not be able to provide those services to the people. And so I'm cognizant of the fact that this is a rare small water company in my district in the heart of Missoula, actually. And the rates that the city of Missoula charges are about twice as much as what the consumers would be paying under my proposal. So I think the consumers are going to be protected with a very, very exceptionally low rate compared to the rest of the city. And at the same time, I think there's a little bit of protection for the company, hopefully enough incentive for them to stay in business and continue offering these low rates to their customers.
Additional discussion, Commissioner Bukacek.
Say we went back and forth last time over all of this. This is a issue that we didn't necessarily agree with. We chose to compromise. I think it's reasonable.
All right. Additional discussion. Okay, let's vote. I think we should probably do a roll call vote on this one. Vice President Fielder,
Yes.
Commissioner Panoche? Commissioner Buchcheck?
Yes.
I will be a yes as well. So Vice President Fielder's motion carries 4-0. All right, thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Okay, work session item number 4 is commission travel update, to have commissioners who have traveled during the interim period to provide an update to the public on the purpose of the commissioner's travel in conformance with our agency Blue Book policies. All right, so we'll start with Vice President Fielder.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. The only commission business related travel that I have undertaken since our last report was my trips back and forth from my home district to our main offices in Helena, and I have not put any travel reimbursement requests in for that travel. So I don't have any official travel expenses to report for.
All right, thank you, Vice President Fielder. Commissioner Panoche.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I've had some travel. I've had to accommodate the Lincoln Reagan Day dinner in Lewistown, but I covered those expenses out of my own pocket. And I did some travel past Great Falls, but again, I paid for that out of my own pocket. So I have no travel to report that I've asked to be reimbursed on. Thank you, Mr. President.
Commissioner Buchcheck.
I was fortunate to attend the Advanced Nuclear State Collaborative in Richland, Washington, April 26th and 27th. It was one of the best organized and implemented meetings I've ever been to, and I've been to a lot of them over the decades. So it might even be the best. And the expenses that I asked for reimbursement for were $534.74, which was mileage. I like to drive. So anyway, it was this state collaborative was initiated by the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners and the National Association of Energy State Officials, and it was supported by the Department of Energy. The purpose was to enhance understanding of regulatory and policy questions surrounding consideration and deployment of new nuclear generation, to offer support from experts while participating in real-time learning. The attendees invited were representatives of states considering or actively working toward the deployment of advanced nuclear reactors, and present were more than 30 members, state utility commissions and state energy offices that represented 23 states. So they were from the East Coast and West Coast. It was great. Ben Brower, Montana Department of Environmental Quality Energy Planning Supervisor, was there, and we did some of the small groups together. So I had a significant opportunity to discuss with him the different topics at hand. So the format, there were lectures and discussions and also field trips. The lectures and discussions: nuclear energy overview, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory and Framatome overview, and then discussions pertinent to the field trips. We were able to ask incessant questions if we wanted to. So Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, it is one of the 17 U.S. Department of Energy national laboratories. They work on, among other things, advanced solutions for long-term United States nuclear and radiologic security, also energy resilience through expertise in various aspects of the power grid. So the tours, we went there: radiochemical processing, material science and technology, waste form development, metal organic framework, cable degradation management, nuclear facilities. We were able to talk to the experts in all those areas and see some of the things that they do. And then Framatome, it's a nuclear fuel manufacturing facility, one of 3 leading centers in the United States for innovation in fuel design and fabrication. So those were the lab tours that we did: fuel design and also fabrication, uranium dioxide power pellets, and fuel rod assemblies. We got to see some of them doing that kind of work. This is what the plant looks like. A lot of those buildings. So the predominant concerns that were discussed about the nuclear source of power, the number one for everybody was cost to the ratepayer. So one of the things that made this so well done was that approximately within a month before this meeting, they got together with the different representatives of the 23 states. Mr. Rosequist, President Brown, and I were in on that call where they went through some of our concerns, questions, where we were in the process, those kind of things. So they did that ahead of time. And then toward the end, we had a big discussion of the ongoing concerns that different people had. And so they had already compiled our concerns and questions ahead of time and then updated them as we went along. And then a large discussion at the end were the different concerns about nuclear sources of power. And then they put all the concerns in the back of the room, and we were able to rate what our top three were. And so of the group of all the people that got to vote on this, cost to the ratepayer was the biggest concern. Disposal and recycling of nuclear waste was number two. Availability of transmission and metals, uranium, thorium, copper, all kinds of things. There's a real concern. There's shortage of all of those in the world. Choosing and citing locations, and then citizens' resistance to nuclear power. So takeaways were many. I mean, there's no substitute for hands-on experiences going to these different labs and the opportunities to ask questions of the experts. There's burgeoning information available to address questions about structure, function, regulation, and other policies regarding deployment of new nuclear generation. And those two organizations, they provide ongoing assistance. So those are kind of the takeaways. Thank you. Is that 5 minutes? Right on?
I'm not sure, but you've certainly set the bar high for presentations on travel.
That
So
was part of my intent, sir.
that was excellent work, and thank you. Thank you for the update, and thank you for taking on this
I
project.
enjoyed it greatly. And people from across the United States. It's about what they're doing. It was a great experience. Appreciate the work that they did to organize it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, I had no travel during this period. So that winds up the travel update. I will, before we close today's meeting, I will take a point of personal privilege. We just discussed the matter of the application of a high quality H2O. I would note for the record that one of the consultants or witnesses in that matter was Mr. Leroy Beebe. On April 3rd, 2023, Mr. Beebe passed away, and Mr. Beebe was a longtime employee of the Montana Public Service Commission, working here for 18 years, and then he served in that capacity like he did in the high quality H2O matter as a consultant witness on many of our cases. And so let's just take a moment to recognize Mr. Beebe and to wish his family well. All right, thank you, commissioners. Our next commission business meeting will be Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at the regularly scheduled time. And seeing no further business to come before us, the time is now 9:58 a.m. I will adjourn today's business meeting.